Well, hello there, another flight controller product. This is a bit more involved, and it's got a brilliant little tagline on this box, which is called Awesome Flies for Dream. What is it, you're asking? And it's best described as being kind of an all-in-one tower. If we open the box up, inside this rather nice box is you've got an F3 flight controller, a 20 amp all-in-one ESC which runs DShot, and the interesting thing about this flight controller is, let's focus, it has got an inbuilt VTX. You'll see it's got the little LCD display there. Now I have to say, inside the box there's not much going on. You've got that flight controller, you've also got the ESC board, a little bag of standoff, some wires and some SMA connections. Quite interesting, that one. You've got SMA connectors, if you can see just on the board here. Let's get the right way around. You've got, no, focus on the board, not me. You've got the 4 little holes here where the SMA adapter will go into, or you can run a pigtail straight off of it. That's quite a neat touch. You've even got, let's press that out, this little skew planar antenna. That bit's all good. The only issue I've got with this whole setup is that's what's in the box, just those bits. Is there any documentation? No. Is there any documentation online? There doesn't appear to be. And I've already emailed the company twice without any response. So I'm going to kind of have to wing it a little bit and see if I can figure out exactly what to do. I think the most obvious thing is connect the ESC board and the VTX together via a cable, and obviously there's a battery connection there. And then it's got a couple of marks on here. It's got UART 1, UART 2, that one says CAM, but yeah, it's all a little bit of a mystery. Hopefully I'll be able to find out how to work that, but unless I can find some proper documentation, it's going to have to be kind of try to figure it out and see what happens. Anyway, join me and we'll see if we blow it up or it actually works or not. Okay, here to start the wiring job. So the ESC is pretty obvious. The motor wires come in here down the sides for each one. We've got the battery leads coming here, that's nice and easy. Over here is the connector to link to the main board, which comes on like this. Let me just pop the top on. So what I thought it was important to do before I did anything is get this SMA adapter on, and before I powered it up actually plug in the skew, because obviously that the VTX would burn out without anything there. So some of the other things became a little bit more obvious. So here's the cam, well, the thing that fitted in the cam port. So that's going to go over to the camera, which is going to be over there at some point. That's the connection back to the the PDB ESC board. So the weird thing was on how to get the receiver. So here's one of the cables that came with it, and I looked at this and thought, well, that's probably PPM. And sure enough, I plugged it in, put it to PPM on my receiver, and that was. The other one was a bit weirder. It looked exactly like that cable. If we look just here, this is the exact same port it was plugged in, and it basically, this seems to be plugged into motor wire 4. Yet what I found is if I went, and this is purely by trial and error, if I set up UART 3 as serial and set it to S-bus, then it would work as S-bus, which was very curious, despite the fact that we've got other ports around here that are labelled as UART 2 and 3, so that's really weird. But yeah, receiver's plugged in on S-bus. This is an X4RSB. So we need to finish off now. The only thing I need to do soldering wise, once again, is just on this part here. We can see there's a place to put a buzzer, which I'm going to put them in. Oh, you can see here the UART ports. Well, I suppose just looking at it kind of makes sense, because this is labelled as UART 1, UART 2, and this just looks like it's, well, as it says, the 6 motor wires you'd expect there, but apparently this seems to work as UART 3 as well. Who could know? Well, I'll tell you what, a manual would have been handy, wouldn't it? Then we'd be able to work that out rather than just randomly going around trying to do it. Anyway, let's finish that off and get the rest of the bits installed.
So I thought I'd just connect into Betaflight and show you what I've set up, as it doesn't come in any particularly useful defaults. So ports, as I said, setting UART 3 to serial RX lets you use that large port, which you'd expect was basically the normal PWM or the PPM one, weirdly. On the configuration, I've gone for DShot 600 because it says it supports it, and why not use it. Obviously S-Bus here, and I've gone for a 4 kHz gyro update and 2 kHz PID loop frequency. Doing any higher was putting the CPU load up too high, so it's hovering around 20% here, which seems about right. Yeah, that's all there is with it. I mean, obviously I've set up my receiver, I've got my normal modes, ARM, air mode, angle, beeper, but we fly mainly acro, so should be okay. So next thing to do is just to calibrate my ESCs, and I think 2 of them will be running the wrong way, so I'll be going into BLHeli to set that one up. So here's something quite exciting I only just found out about. There is now a BLHeli Configurator Chrome app. This is great for me as a Mac user, as normally I have to run in virtualization for Windows. But running it this way means I don't have to do that, hopefully. So let's try this, because I've got motors 2 and 3 are spinning in the wrong direction. So let's see how this works. Read setup. So I'll change motor direction there, and motor direction there, and then say right setup. Look at that, that was easy. Yeah, that's well worth getting, isn't it? The reason I heard about this is I read it just on Oscar Lane's excellent blog while I was looking for something else. Always great stuff on his blog, well worth checking out.
So I thought it might be useful to show how the VTX works, because it confused the bejesus out of me until I found a review on the awesome XV130, which happens to use the same board. So I've got my little G10 here set to F1 or immersion 1, and if we plug a LiPo in here, so you can hopefully see, zoom in a little bit, that we are connected, well, we're on channel A4. So this is a really weird operation. Just pressing it does nothing. You have to hold it in for a couple of seconds, and then it starts going A, B, C, D, E, and then get to A again, which is a bit weird. What I found out is A is A, B is B, C is, what's the next one? C is E, and D is F, and I think E is race. So if I stop this at D, and then you select which channel you want, so we'll have D1, or F1 in real terms, and then it goes back and forth until you hit the button a couple of times, well, for a couple of seconds, until you get this little dot there, which means it's saved. And at that point, we've got a picture. Always have some little halo guys standing by just in case we need them to look cool. The other thing you can do is set the power on this. Now this is another weird one. It goes from 25 to 200 to 400, and what you have to do for that is press this for about 6 seconds. And when it says 1, that's 25, 2 is 200, 3 is 400. And then presumably we have to give it a little press again for 2 seconds. And then we got the flash. So you see we've got little two flashes of the dot there, indicating we're in the second mode, which is 200 milliwatts. Which I think is a really weird system, to be honest with you. The weirdest single button one I've seen. But I've got everything hooked up now. So let me pop the top back on. I've got the motor spinning in the right direction, the ESCs calibrated. So let's pop the top on, go through the setup, and then I can get and fly it. So here's what the quad looks like put together. I thought I'd just run through what I had. It's mainly spare parts, ZMR frame, and of course anybody that's been doing this for just like a year or two has got probably 3 or 4 of these knocking around in their house. They were just everywhere for a while. Plenty of space in these, so that's quite nice. I've got some Cobra 2204 motors here, as I had these kicking around. I found some Dow 5040 free-bladed props, which are quite nice. Oh, and there's no OSD in this flight controller, so what I've got is a Runcam Swift 2, which has its own OSD for bringing the voltage there, which is quite handy. Now you can see, if you look here under the battery strap, just how much room there is here. Absolute stacks, and there's a whole blank space here, and there's another blank space there. You see I've got the pigtail going from the VTX up to here. There's a huge amount of room. So this probably isn't intended for this sort of 250 size quad. This is more about tidying up your wiring in something like that little 130 quad that it ships with. Yeah, the only external thing I've got there is the little receiver right at the back there. But there is, you know, oodles of space. You can put a hell of a lot more in here. I'm not sure what the HD cam is going to be yet. Might put a session on there again, or maybe the Firefly. We'll see. Anyway, it's all set up, ready to go. I did a very quick hover in the garden line of sight just to make sure it didn't do anything weird, and it looked okay. So I'll get some batteries charged up, we'll take it to the field, and we'll see if it flies okay. So here I am at the field on a typical windy day, and I managed to get 4 lipos done. And well, what could I say? It seems to fly okay to start with. Now I did go and put the session on this as well. Here it is, look, it's this little thing in the corner there. But I thought, because this has got the VTX on board as well, it was more relevant just to show the DVR footage, so I'll show that for the rest of the time. And as far as the VTX goes, I was pretty impressed really. I didn't find any particular areas of breakup. I sort of went, you know, behind the tree occasionally and up to the end of the field and sort of between the tree gap, which is only about 250 metres, but no breakup, seemed pretty solid. And although I'm quite late to the party here in terms of the Runcam Swift 2, love that, really nice picture. Quite handy having the voltage thing there, although I'm so used to having an OSD, I was slightly confused. Like every time I changed from air mode to normal, it's like, well, why isn't my mode updating? Of course it's nothing to do with the flight controller. So one thing I would say about this quad is it's not flying particularly brilliantly. Now it could be that the wind is very gusty and it's blowing it around a bit. It could be that these are old motors I had in a box, and at least on a couple of them the bearings are questionable. But I was missing the fact that there isn't an OSD on this flight controller. I've been so spoilt by having OSDs on even the little Aurora 100s and the Omnibus style flight controllers that I really missed it, especially where this is a little bit wobbly, and I'm thinking actually I just want to go in and just mess around with a couple of the PIDs. So it could have been a PID thing, it could have been a motor thing, it could have been a flight controller thing, although it seems pretty good. I have to say the quad felt really heavy. I mean, it shouldn't be particularly, it's reasonably big I suppose for what it is now. But it was really lacking the sort of the top end power to do climb outs and things. But never mind, that's by the by. Yeah, as far as the flight controller went, felt pretty good. VTX, very nice. I have to question the fact about how easy it would be to go and change the channels and stuff when it's sort of buried under your frame there, given you need to look at the display and be able to touch the button. But for what it's doing in the field here, it's at least as good as the normal stuff, and the SKU that was sent with the whole pack seems pretty good as well. So yeah, no complaints at all. Quite a neat little system. Two front motors, bearings are a bit noisy. But that aside, hey, I quite like this. You know, I did think these tower things were a little bit gimmicky at first, but the fact you can sort of all go up the middle like this, and you don't have to think about, you know, am I going to be able to squeeze my receiver in there and the camera, and where am I going to put my ESCs, and how do I get the wiring all nicely in there? I like the fact this didn't take me long to put together. It just pretty much went and it flew not too badly, these bearings aside. So pros and cons, of course, with the all-in-one ESC things. Really nice that all I've got is, you know, is a couple of motor wires going in here. Of course, you lose one ESC, you lose the whole board. That's gone. But I like the fact that I don't have a separate power distribution board. It just handles that whole voltage going in. And I also like that fact, and part of the reason I show the DVR footage is, of course, you've got that whole voltage going into the board running the VTX, and normally I wouldn't put my entire voltage through the VTX, I'd put that through 12 volts or something. But minimal amounts of noise that I could see coming from this VTX. I was really quite impressed with it. That and the rather lovely Runcam Swift 2 made a lovely picture, I thought, even with the quite gloomy conditions we had. And that was the session mounting at the end. So I think places where this board will really excel is where you're talking about a very small X-frame with not much real estate. This ZMR has got oodle space and you really don't need it in here. But where you've got this tiny little X and you haven't got any of these forward or backwards places, having this tower and just the ESCs coming in I think would be really good. You put it together with something like the tiny little FreeSky XM Plus and you've got everything in that central column without it being this massive tall thing as well, which is really nice. Personally, I'd have loved the OSD as well because I'm so used to being able to just twiddle with my profiles and my gains and my PIDs and, you know, the whole curves. I'd have liked to have seen if I could have made this a bit smooth on the field because I don't drag a computer with me. But there it is. Pretty good, pretty interesting. Depends what you're after, but this is an interesting prospect. It's the Awesome Flytower F3 flight controller integrated. That's a mouthful, isn't it? With the 5.8 VTX. I'll have links down below, of course. Please check them out and visit the Banggood website if you want to see what it looks like. Meantime, I will see you in the next one. Bye for now.